Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
Yep, I'm Evan.
All right, so today we are going to be covering one of our favorite armies. Well, let's face it, they're all our favorite armies, but we're going to be talking about Wood Elves. Now we're going to try a slightly new format today. We're actually going to break this video up into a part one and a part two. So, Evan, what are we going to cover in part one?
Part one is going to take us through the character selection, which is very often 50% of your points anyway, so you're getting half your value in half the video.
All right,
And
so let's dive in.
we're going to go through the characters and the items they use because, I mean, that's the most complicated part. If you have a Glade Lord, he's got 100 points of magic items and 50 points of tree spirits. What do you pick? What are people going to take, right? I mean, that's a lot to handle. And you have all these different mount options too. And that's why I think in a lot of people's army breakdown videos, you spend half your time just talking about what are the characters going to do before you get to the other half of the army, right?
Cool.
So,
Well, let's talk about the army composition first.
yeah, so the army composition. So, characters can be up to 50% of your army's points value, as pretty much is always the case. And
Mm-hmm.
what's very common with, like the armies of the elves is you have 0 to 1 Glade Lord or Spellweaver. That's going to be your combat character or your spellcaster per 1,000
Mm-hmm.
points. So, generally, an army will have one of each at a 2,000 points level. Or, and here's really an interesting little wrinkle, 0 to 1 Treeman Ancient per 1,000 points. And a Treeman Ancient can be a level 4 wizard as well. So you could have two Glade Lords and a Treeman Ancient. Maybe. I don't know. And then you
Yeah,
can
you
have.
could. It's really interesting. I think the Treeman Ancient, and we'll talk more about him.
Yeah.
He's almost like the Wood Elf, their version of kind of that melee wizard, but monstrous character as well. So it's not a demon prince, but in terms of like it's big, it has larger stats than a normal man-sized character. It's an interesting hybrid combination where you're spending more points, but it can do more things, and you just have to ask yourself: are you getting your bang for the buck, having both a melee and a wizard character wrapped into one?
Right. And then we have the Glade Captains, who are kind of your BSB and your, shooty man. They can ride their great stags and stuff. You have the Spell
Hmm.
Singers, who are your lower level wizards. Shadow Dancers, which are fun little stabby, dancy people.
Hmm.
Waystalkers, which are your basically the best sniper in the game. Now, whether that's
Yep.
something that's super useful when there's not like a lot of magic bows that can capitalize on that, but we have hey, you're a sniper, and
Hmm.
a branchwraith, who is a nice little tree wizard lady,
So no,
right?
no restrictions on those. So pretty standard restrictions in how they divvied up the characters.
Right, and I think the characters also these are going to fit quite deeply into what the rest of your army is going to be because oftentimes there's a synergy here, or maybe if your character is providing some level of support, you then take units that then benefit from that support. The most common or most often seen example of this would be like if you have an Elementalism Spellweaver, then they can be throwing out a Plague of Rust on somebody. Then maybe all of your archers can be taking the Hagbane tip poison
Hmm.
arrows, for example. That's a synergy, so you're going to have characters in one part and then units that then back them up. So we're going to talk about just the characters first. So I think we're going to skip the rest of the army composition for now and just what are your characters going to be? I mean, oh yeah, it does mention right here. So you have your Glade Captain can be your battle standard bearer for the Grand Army. Now I bet we're going to see other BSB options in the Arcane Journal. We've seen that in almost all of them, I believe. Um, but for example, if you have a full treekin army, there isn't like a tree BSB. Well, that rhymes.
Hmm.
So first off, we have the Wood Elf Nobles, right? So a Glade Lord is essentially the Lord level elf. This is the elf that can ride a dragon, so we're going to be getting that soon. And then the Glade Captain is just a little bit not as cool, right? He's got weapon skill 6, ballistic skill, and you can see the ballistic skill is really, really high, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, and
So
it's the same for the Glade Lord, right?
yeah,
High weapon skill, high ballistic skill, very high initiative, leadership, some of the highest in the game. Definitely see that in a lot of the elves. Uh, Good number of attacks, and wounds are right on the lower side, but it's really the biggest difference you're seeing with these characters, elf characters versus others. They even have the higher movement, but it's that toughness and the strength is not as high as you would see in a lot of other armies.
yeah, but what can solve that problem? Ooh, a mount with a combined profile that just raises your toughness, right?
Hmm. That
So
helps.
we're definitely going to get to the mount options. But what are the mundane items? So you get to start with a bow. Most other
Hmm.
armies, you have like you can buy a bow for 4 points, and it's like, but why? But you just start with one, so you don't have to worry about that. I always get to shoot a bow at people. Great, why
Hmm.
not? Then you could take additional hand weapon, great weapon, or cavalry spear. So there's no lance here. That's interesting to note because I think that it's not very wood elfy to have lances. They just take cavalry spears instead. But you
Hmm.
very often see great weapons on these characters because they do have strikes first. So the strikes last of the great weapon just cancels out, and you already have high initiative, right? So as long as you're willing to not use
Yeah.
a shield, why not great weapon? And I think that this
Hmm.
is kind of an interesting balance problem for the elf characters is that like, well, a lot of the magic swords and stuff aren't as good as just bringing the great weapon. So why would you take them?
Yeah, when you have that strike first, strike last, when you have the biggest reason to not take a great weapon is the strike last. But if you have a rule that counteracts that and your base initiative is already so high, it almost makes it a no-brainer because it gives you +2 strength and and 2 AP. Um, very few of the best magic weapons are better than that, quite frankly, right? You have to get to like the ogre blade before you're really doing, multiple D3 damage to beat that profile inherently because of that strike last penalty being negated by the character itself.
Right. So then you can also take the magic arrows for your bow. Now, again, unlike maybe what people might assume, in melee, this character has 4 attacks, but if you have a bow and a regular bow, you just shoot 1 arrow. So even if you have really
Hmm.
good ballistic skill, you fire 1 arrow shot that has no AP base. So if you have game tips, for example, you just have 1 shot.
Hmm.
I think it could still be worth it, or if you're not buying a magic bow, to just, why not Swift Shiver Shards? You've got 2 shots. If somebody has a little level 4 wizard who's on 1 wound left and you're like, it's the last turn of the game. Let's see if I can just punk this guy with my little bow shot. Who knows?
Hmm.
And maybe that's worth 6 points. Um, but
Even just not just for the character. I mean, I know it's only 1 or 2 shots, and sure, you're not going to be taking out a brick infantry. Sure, you're not going to be taking down the other person's dragon. But again, just taking 1 or 2 wounds off of the fast cav unit or a 4 wound model. Or right, just chaff or fell bats or things that get in the way. Getting rid of the enemy's control and chaff units or skirmishers because your ballistic skill is so high you can hit those skirmisher units on the ground. Taking away 1 or 2 of them can make a difference, because a lot of those units are only 5 models or 10, so it does matter.
yeah, and you get to stand and shoot if someone's charging you. So why not have that shot be decent, right? For only a couple
Hmm.
points. I don't know.
When your ballistic skill is that high, you are going to hit.
Maybe Moonfire Shot would be a good play just so that, hey, if the Green Knight's charging you, you can be like, you know what, buddy? Just one little magic arrow to shove right in his face.
Hmm.
I'm going to do that. So we do have mounts. We'll come right back to them in a second. Forest Spites, we talked about this. So this is one of those nice little, like, oh, you have upgrades that aren't even items. These are other stuff that you get to add on. And we'll talk about them later in a second as well.
But it's
And
similar again, just like the Bretonians have their vows, the vampire
yes.
cants have their vampire powers, the chaos have their demonic or the mutate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this army, the Wood Elves have forest sprites, is their way to further enhance their characters beyond the normal magical equipment allotment.
And then we have 100 points of items for the Lord level and 50 for the Captain. That's very, very standard. I mean, other than Dwarves, that's pretty much what everyone has. But what everyone does not have is the Era of Kronos rule, which just lets you at the start of the game fire a single Strength 3 bow shot at the enemy general if you're willing to not go first, which is a really weird rule that no one ever uses. I
Well, it
don't
it, it
understand.
was more effective in earlier previous editions where you could do more shenanigans with different bows and different things. In the current edition, it doesn't have a lot of play. Currently, we have yet to see what the Arcane Journal will bring us, unless you just want to poke your opponent or you want to go second anyway, right? It's also relative to sometimes you do want to go second. It just depends.
But what we do have is a couple unique rules here that are insane, especially on some of the mounts. We have evasive. So if
Hmm.
anyone shoots at you for any reason, you can just be like, cool, I'm going to fall back and I'm just going to face a totally different direction than I was a second ago. I hope you're ready for this.
So good. It's so good.
When people try to Vile Tide the Wood Elf Noble on his dragon, Vile Tide has a range of like 15 inches. He's just going to fall back out of that range. He's basically immune to it.
Mm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, Fire and Flee. So you can, I mean, and probably not on the dragon, but you can shoot and then just run away, which is
Hmm.
cool.
Hmm.
Ignore cover. So all of your shots, you don't care about the whole cover penalties and stuff, and move through cover. So even if you're um, on a mount, you still get to do that because it doesn't say it doesn't apply. That's cool. And then Rallying Cry. Some of the elves do get to do this, but like Empire characters and stuff, you just get to say, "Hey, fleeing unit, you have a second attempt to not continue to flee," which is great.
Great
Why not?
ability.
And when you're on a dragon, your range for this is 18 inches, so that's
Mm-hmm.
great. And of course, we were talking about strikes first, so just your elf lord is like, "No, I go first."
Yeah.
Great.
Now I know we're talking a whole bunch about putting the character on the dragon because again, there's a lot of reasons to do it, but there are other mounts as well, right? And a lot of these mechanics in terms of firing flea, going through cover, there's a lot of great combos where you put an elf character, lord or hero, right? Where you put them on an eagle or you put them on a stag. And again, it's not about punching the big other units. It's about that's a great wizard hunter or war machine hunter, or he'll go chase down the chaff of the other enemies, and they're super effective at doing that. So there definitely are other builds
Right.
where some of these rules will come more into play. They're less applicable to the dragon, but are much more applicable if you have that lone hero hunter out chasing things down.
So we do have the options here. So the Elven Steed is just basically a horse. It doesn't have any barding, and it's a fast cavalry model. So I mean, you tend to not see them on here, especially because of the stag option. So the Great Stag, I mean,
Well, to be fair, it's not just a horse; it's a movement 9 horse.
it is a
That's the
moving nine
fastest
horse.
horse in the game, I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Well, Elise's unicorn is like movement 10 or something like that.
Is it? Well,
It's
it's a unicorn.
stupid. It's very annoying. Anyway, um, so okay, very very normal. We have movement 9, fast cavalry, swift stride. Cool.
Hmm. Very fast.
Elf horses also have a higher initiative than normal.
They
Cool.
do.
Whatever. But the Great Stag, I think this is great. I mean, you have movement 8, so you're still pretty fast. You got good weapon skill.
Very
It's
fast.
strength 5 base. It ups your toughness. It gives you an extra wound. Has a couple
It's
attacks, but
great.
very 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 importantly, armored hide 2. Now, this is really insane because you generally can't get a lot of armor on your elf characters.
Hmm.
So, having Armored Hide where it gets to just combine with your regular armor save, very, very important. So, we'll
Yep,
see some of
super
the
effective.
items later. You can get a Noble on a Great Stag with a 2 plus armor save, and a Lord on a Great Stag with a 2 plus armor save, and have them both just running around, even though they're Wood
Hmm.
Elves.
And they're very effective.
And because you're Monsters Cavalry, you get to skirmish, so you get to have a 360 line of sight, and you're evasive. So you can kind of just run around solo, and if someone says, "Aha, I will fireball you," you can, well, I'm just going to fall back behind this forest, and now you can't see me anymore. So cool.
Mhm.
I'm glad
Yes,
you
as long
wasted
as
all
you're
your
not
shots.
in the open, the middle open of the table, or somewhere where there's no terrain. As long as there's some terrain on your table, if you're hunting things down or chasing around the terrain, you have this incredible threat range. You're so fast from that terrain, but if you're near the terrain, you can still flee from the things that typically would, because it's going to be almost impossible or very hard to catch you with unless you have another like Pegasus Knights or another 360 flying thing. So the next best way the opponent can deal with you are those magic missiles or those ranged attacks, and you have mechanics to help you deal with avoiding getting punked by those missile attacks.
Yeah, very debatably, the Great Stag is an even better piece than the Dragon, because a Dragon is very easily to say, okay, I'm going to cast Miasma Barrage on you, and you're going to do nothing. Or, I'm just going to move out of your arc of sight, and now you can't charge me. Well, with the Great Stag, he's got 360 line of sight, and he's a lot faster, and he's got move through cover. He does an impact hit and has a stomp attack.
Hmm.
Great. Why not? You know? That's cool.
And still has to stride. Hmm.
Yeah, fantastic. And 50 points. I mean, I think it's a lot cheaper than a Demogryph, and it's probably better.
Hmm.
I think it's
It's
better.
really it's one of the best mounts in the game for sure.
So there's a unicorn. Now this is mostly, I think, exclusively for the wizards, but it's kind of a very similar profile. We still have the 2 attacks, Armor Bane 2. It doesn't give you Armored Hide 2, but Armored Hide 1, and it has a Beguiling Aura, which makes it harder for some people to hit you if they're going to fail that leadership check. This is great, actually, because oftentimes you get charged by, like, I don't know, direwolves or something who are like leadership 4, and then they just can't hit you, which
Hmm.
is awesome.
Yeah, very low leadership. And to
And
your point, it has that movement 10,
yeah,
which is nice.
yeah, unicorns are fast for some reason.
The horns, the aerodynamics, right? It makes
But
them
I
go
do
faster.
think that the Warhawk is even better for your wizards. I don't think the Warhawk quite beats, for your melee character, because you can actually get armor normally. So why would you need it? You don't lose out as much. And so the Warhawk for your sorcerer, your Spellweaver, whatever they're called. I think this is great. The only problem with the Warhawk is that you have movement 2 unless if you're flying. So as soon as
Hmm.
you hit the Falconhorn guy, You just like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna sit in this one spot the entire game on this flying thing.
Yep. Yep. Pros and cons, right? Just I've said it before. I'll say it again. Old World. There's a counter to everything in Old World, and certainly that is one that can rain on your parade. But it is super helpful to be able to fly. That's for sure.
Also, you have feigned flight on a
Hmm.
wizard.
Hmm.
This means that anytime anyone charges you, you can say, you know what? I'm gonna run 3d6 away from you and then just rally.
Yep. Super good.
So if you hate when someone tags your wizard with like 5 warhounds and then you can't dispel when they throw, I don't know, something strong at you, this guy's like, nah, that's not happening. I love that. I think that Feign Flight, wow, that's a great rule.
Yeah, for 30 points, it's
Yeah.
great.
So that's kind of it. I mean, we have the dragon. We're going to see this later, but that's the kind of it for the regular. Essentially, these are the regular mounts. You very often see either the wizard on a steed because they want to join a unit of the Glade Riders, so that they can then have
Hmm.
the reserve move from the Glade Riders and then cast and then run away, cast and then run
Hmm.
away. Or you see them on, I think, the Warhawk, and this is probably what I would do because I just love. I got Feint Flight, bro. You're not getting to me. This is great.
Cool.
Because you can use your
Uh,
wizard on the Warhawk, right, to just like bait charges from frenzied units and just zoom out of there.
mhm. All
So
right, so
let's
we went through the mounts. What else
we
we
have
got?
we have one more mount to talk about.
Ooh, big one.
So Forest Dragon, it's a dragon. It is a lot of points, but it does give you the 6 wounds and it makes your toughness go from 3 to 6. So
Yeah,
that's
that's one of the more
amazing.
expensive dragons, I believe, too.
Yes. It's still strength 7 like most dragons. It does have higher initiative than like the Star Dragon, but it does have only weapon skill 6. I mean, weapon skill 6 is pretty standard. All the dragons have weapon skill 6 except the Star Dragon.
Hmm.
Um, it does have a pretty interesting breath weapon. It's strength 2 with no armor saves. So if you ever find yourself breathing on people, whatever, right? Um, and it does have one of those bite attacks. I'm not used to this because I always played the High Elf Dragons, so they don't have to do that. Um,
Hmm.
And but the thing about this one though is, I think the main one is you do get full plate from riding it, and very often your rider is not going to have anything better than that. So that's pretty cool. Unless you're on the Great Stag, you don't have better than 4 up. So he's just giving you your armor, and then you can go Great Weapon with no guilt because the shield wouldn't have helped you anyway, right?
Hmm.
And this dragon gets to still have evasive when you're riding it. I mean, that's pretty crazy. I think that's great.
Yep.
I think this guy is worse versus just Chaos Lord charging you and fighting you, but better versus like Vile Tide or any kind of like short range like Poison Archer Brick. You have a whole bunch of goblins. They tell TMP close to you and fire all those poison arrows. You're like, haha, I'm out of here. It's great.
Yeah, super powerful. So, yeah, exactly right. So he's not going to go toe to toe with that Chaos Lord totally decked out with all his gear, but still very competitive, very strong. And again, it's that maneuverability is the constant theme you're going to see with the Wood Elf army. Generally speaking, right, they're a hit and run army. They generally don't want, they would prefer to whittle you down before charging you in combat, if at all, and such. But again, you put a lord on a dragon with a great weapon, he's going to do a lot of damage. So he definitely can go beat things up very effectively.
So let's move on to the Spellweaver mages. So first we've got the Spellweaver. She's the level 3. Generally they're female. It's just a
Hmm.
trend. And the Spellsinger's the level 1. And they have the best lores in the game. They've got Battle Magic, Elementalism, and Illusion, and High Magic, which is cute. But the other 3 are the
They have
best lores in the
four
game.
lords. Most wizards don't get four lords, so that's nice.
Maybe your Vampire and Chaos ones don't, but the Empire homeboys, they're like, I got 6. All right?
Well, I'm not used to playing Empire, but yes, I'm used to three lords, so four is great.
Yeah, but very importantly, we have the best 3 in the game. That's great. And they're also the best 3 for this army because you can either have Battle Magic, which is amazing for doing chip damage at long range and at helping you move around faster when you're already fast with Arcane Urgency.
Hmm.
Amazing.
Yep.
You have Elementalism for Plague of Rust, which then buffs all of your poison shooting, which doesn't have AP naturally. Great. And then you have Illusion, which is like, hey, you want to touch me? I'm not going to let you touch me. Also great. Any of
Yeah,
those things
illusion's
work.
great for that.
Pick any of them. They all work.
And it's just
I
a really different style. You'll have to just play some different games. Generally, when I'm playing and I have the option of illusion, I generally don't select it. Not because the spells aren't fantastic, they are, but they're higher. Their casting values are generally higher than the other lores, which is why it's really disappointing when you roll is like, oh, I needed an 11 or a 10 and I got a 9, right? It's just some of them are harder to get off, but it is, which is appropriately costed because they are so powerful what the illusion could do. Battle magic is a great go-to. It's just, again, it's chip damage. It's got some buffs in it, and helps you move faster. So it's a great all-arounder, but it's really just doing more of what the army already does. So it's really just kind of doubling down on the themes and tones you already have in the army versus elementalism. I think is a lot of fun. There's some really great combos in there, and you just don't see people take it as much because it's not as many armies have access to it. So that's a really fun one to take.
And I do think that, hey, if your army's made of tissue paper, it's really great to just be immune to any and all damage by making your unit ethereal. So high magic is possible to use.
Hmm.
I play it every single time I play high elves because it's thematic. But I think you can use high magic in your wood elves, especially if you're going for a melee build. I think it's necessary because in my mind, if your unit can't stand a turn of getting shot or charged, it has to be immune to all damage. Like it has to be immune to fanatics, immune to chariot impact hits, make them ethereal, and then you also have, oh, I'm going to use Fury of Cain to give my guys +1 attack. So if you
Yeah.
have Wild Riders or if you have Wildwood Rangers or something like that, they need that. So normally Wood Elf armies are almost exclusively shooting, but if you're going melee at all, I think that high magic has a good place.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more out of this Evan in the future. I think when What Else first came out, everyone gravitated towards the illusion and more of those control spells with that. And then again, they were having trouble with it or harder, or then they switched over to the multiple pillar fire vortexes, right, with taking the battle magic and such. But then, right, the FAQ took that away. I forget what unit was that on. It was the
Sisters of the
thank you.
Thorn.
Yeah, Sisters of the Thorn. So a lot of Wood Elf players, just so many of them, certainly in our local community and around, really focused heavily on that because it was very, very powerful, and one would argue too powerful. GW certainly did, and so they took that away. And I think we've seen people since they took that away, rather than seeing them experiment with different lists or actually work trying to make melee lists, they just went and played their next favorite army because a lot of the players just have more than one army. That's very, very common. I think once and also the models are just hard to get. The models aren't out yet, right? So that's been another thing that's been holding people
Yeah.
back is they love the models, but the models aren't accessible. And there are 3D prints and other things out there, but the GW models were quite good, and they were more of the newer models when they were released before they stopped the older editions. So I think people are waiting for the models to come back out, and I
Mm-hmm.
think they're waiting for the Arcane Journal, and I think we're going to see a lot more newer builds, new variations, and I think we're going to see combos that we just haven't seen on the battlefield yet that people are waiting to discover.
So, something that's neat about them is they can take talismanic tattoos for a 6+ ward save for 15 points and doesn't have to come out of your magic item total. I think that's just nice and thematic, especially because I'm painting talismanic tattoos on my
It
very
is.
beautiful half naked
Generally
women
speaking,
myself.
if you just roll sixes, life is pretty good. My dice generally just don't roll sixes, so if you need a 6 up, I generally am not going to spend those
Generally
points.
speaking, people aren't really taking ward save items on their wizards anyway. They're just like, please don't hurt me. But I don't know,
Yeah,
15 points, it's fine. I like it, and
yeah, yeah.
you should just paint them on there.
It's nice that it doesn't come out of the magic item allowance. That's what's
Yeah, and they
nice.
do have
Really.
magical attacks base, which is also cool.
Mhm.
With their two little attacks that do nothing. But yeah, why not? So we'll talk about Lore of Athaloran in a little bit, but essentially you've got a couple spells in there. The most important one is Tree Singing, which lets them summon a forest that remains in play. That's really, really useful for helping control people, but I mean it's also similar to like Tempest from High Magic, which summons terrain or something like that. Um, so we'll get to that in a bit. And if you take Lore Familiar, you don't get to take spells from that lore anymore. So that's another thing you have to consider.
Mhm.
Um, they do have access to forest spites, but I don't think almost any of them really matter to the wizards, and so you don't see them on the wizards nearly ever that I've
No,
seen.
yeah.
I think the main one is there's one that can give you like the unit magical attacks. You could have it on the wizard, and the wizard's joined to a unit that then now has magical attacks, something like that.
Well, let's get through the characters and then let's go check them out.
Yeah. So the Shadow Dancer. So this is a thematic little. Basically, this is a character version of your war dancers, and
Mm-hmm.
so you get to be weapon skill 8.
Ooh.
Okay. I mean, I really wish I could rewrite the book so I could change that weapon skill table so that weapon skill 8 made it harder for people to hit you, but it doesn't. Really. Like, if you're weapon skill 8 and someone's weapon skill 4, they hit you on a 4 plus.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't feel right, but whatever. Those are gripes that I have with the main book. Um, but I mean, it can be very important because of some of the abilities and some of the spites that we see in here. And so you can make them a level 1 wizard. Cool. And then they still, basically they can join that unit of war dancers, and then they get to have the dance that they're joined to. One of them is like -1 to hit. One of them is giving them like extra attack, stuff like that. So that when you join these guys to the dancers, they really kind of come into their own. They can take items, but some people mistakenly think that you can take a Dragon Slayer sword on this character and then also a Spear of Loic and just pick which one you want to use because the Spear of Loic has magical attacks, but it doesn't. You're not allowed to do that. I really hate that rule that you have to use your magic weapon all the time, but okay. Yep. Not a horrible character to throw the Dragon Slayer sword on because you can just be like, hey, I have strikes first. I'm weapon skill 8. Are you really want to risk it?
I think to your point, it's really it's 85 points for that hero level character and generally very good stats, but T3 and 2 wounds, right? So 2 wounds, you'll go down real quick. So you got to be really careful when using this. And to your point, it is fun to be level 1 wizard. I think, generally speaking, I think one of the challenges with this edition, I really do like a lot of the directions, and I agree with a lot of the reasons to speed up the game, why they made the magic system the way they made it. But inherently, because of the way the dispelling works, that you have unlimited dispels, right? You just get that level 4 in the middle of the table. Suddenly, those level 1s and 2s and 3 wizards are just rarely getting anything off, which is why I think we're seeing a lot less of them. So I love seeing, hey, here's a vampire who's level 1 or level 2. Here's a sorcerer level 1 or level 2. Basically, if they want to get spells off, they have to kind of stay on the fringes of the battlefield or further away from where they want to be. But you have to, generally speaking, in this edition, get closer range for a lot of your spells. The range on spells in this edition is shorter intentionally because, they wanted to get away from the wizards sitting at the back of the table shooting everybody. So I love that you can be level 1, but again, inherently with this edition, right, you're often going to find yourself this character within range of a level 4 and will never get a spells off. So that's why it's cool that it's there, but we're just not seeing people.
So real quick,
it's hard to make it work.
You're basically just taking the wizard level to either get Hammerhand, which is extra damage into the kind of units you want to fight, which is like infantry units, right? You just 2 to 3 more hits. Great. Mm-hmm. Or you're taking it to use Glittering Robe, which is even better. So you're up skill 8, let's make you even harder to hit, and then who cares whether you have 2 wounds and you're up to 3? No one ever hits you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
unless that Pillar of Fire comes in.
And Glittering Robe is an 8+, so that's like not that hard to get off even at level 1. You only have to roll a 7. I don't know. I think that's okay. I think that if the character was like 50 points to start with, that'd be great. And then basically this character is a great way to just take that War Dancer unit and turn them into a nice little blender. If 6 War Dancers and a Shadow Dancer hit like a unit of Clan Rats, they're going to kill like 12 of them, and then the Clan Rats are just going to run away. It's going to be great. But they're very good against fighting like Weapon Skill 3, Toughness 3 units. And so whether you see a lot of those or not depends on whether you're playing my missions or not. But that's a future video there, Mike.
Different story. Yep, different time.
Hey, I like this. You get D3 extra attacks as just like a regular weapon for free. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why not?
Yep. Yeah, it's that classic War Dancer concept of, right, they have these different stances that they could go into, and effectively they're the right tool for the job, and they could switch between them. But exactly your point, typically, whether you're in this edition of the game, older edition of these games, or even similar types of rules or mechanics are also in 40k as well, with elves and that such, often they suffer from, they're great against... there are blender versus lightweight units. They can, to a degree, as long as they get the right thing off, hit mid-tier units. But if they're starting to hit heavy units, monsters or things that have a lot of armor, they're just going to bounce, right? So you need to be aware of what you're setting them into and making sure you're setting them up for success, not something that they're just going to bounce off of. And because if they get hit back, going to have a bad time.
I do think that you could just stick them in there with no upgrades whatsoever and just stick them in the unit and be like, this is cool, see what happens. So the Waystalker, a similar level character where we have again 85 points for a guy who's got one of the best ballistic skills in the game, ballistic skill
Oh yeah.
7.
Hmm.
Still only 2 wounds, but this guy is mostly for shooting, so who
Yep.
cares? We could take the additional hand weapon. Cool, great, why not? And then we take some magic arrows, but there are magic bows that we can take here, and you can be an ambusher. And then he's mostly here as your little guy who hangs out with his way watchers, because in the current rules you can't bring way watchers at all unless you bring waystalkers, which is, I know, for a lot of people really annoying. I just think that's like a vibe. I want my way watchers and my waystalker joining them, and the waystalker is going to be like firing sniper bullets at people, and the way watchers are all going to have, arcane bodkins. Why not? This is great.
Hmm.
And he's got magic item launch, so you could, even if you just give him a ruby ring, whatever. But there are magic bows that we have the option of. And one of the reasons why I like these guys is because, unlike just Deepwood Scouts, the Way Watcher and the Waystalkers, they've got like feigned flight. What an amazing rule. Feigned flight means you can just stand in front of people, in front of like a nice little brick of troops or whatever, and be like, charge me. I get to shoot you, then I get to freely run away, then I get to rally, and even if you catch me, I still get to fight you, and I'm probably going to hit you first. What a great slap in the face. I love that. Like, I can't talk how much up about how good Feigned Flight was when I was fighting like 36 gutter runners and they all had it. Um, but the main thing this guy gets is Hawkeye Archer, which lets you just break the rules of the game. I get to snipe characters out of units.
Hmm.
Cool. I mean, they did FAQ it that they get a Lookout Sir, but Lookout Sirs have requirements. Lookout Sir, you have to have a 2 plus other models, or I'm sorry, 5 other actual
5
models.
models.
So
Hmm.
when somebody puts their Chaos Lord in a unit of like 6, not Chaos Lord, the Sorcerer, in a unit of
Hmm.
like 6 Barbarian Horsemen, you just have to kill 2 Horsemen, and now they can't Lookout Sir anymore, and your Waywatcher goes, alright, I'm going to pull a Legolas, and just puts an arrow right through this guy's face.
Hmm. Very
Or if they're
effective.
running around solo, if they're trying to hide near units, then there is no Lookout Sir, you can just shoot at them.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those things that just bringing him, especially if you put a magic bow on him, that's threat enough to force the opposing player who does want to be running around as lone characters. It's forcing him, in particular, to put his weaker wizard type characters into units, which again is making him less mobile, more contained. You have more control over that. So just the threat of having him on the table will change the way your opponent has to play the game. So even if he never, oh, I never sniped anybody with him. Yeah, but you prevented his wizards from running around and going where they wanted to go. That was very powerful just by bringing him.
This guy would also do an amazing job either murdering banshees or forcing banshees to not get to do what they want to do.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
So, and a banshee costs 90 points.
Yeah. 90 points. Yep. For base
So,
banshee. Yep.
anti banshee, I don't know. I think that might be worth it.
Yeah. Honestly, well, they have. I think the best way to kill banshees is the pillar fire, but that the way stalker
Yeah,
is
in
probably the second
particular, if
best
you're
way to kill
not taking
banshees.
battle magic, I think the Way Watcher becomes a lot more useful because Pillar of Fire just says, wow, you tried to run solo characters? No, you didn't. They're dead.
Hmm.
Okay, anyway, let's talk about the tree people, Mike. What do you think about the Treeman Ancient?
I love the Treeman Ancient model, and I love the theme and the tone. I'm really hopeful and optimistic that the Arcane Journal will bring us more exciting things for this theme. But TBD, what the Arcane Journal is going to bring us in the future. In terms of the Ancient, right? You have that. I mentioned it before. That what challenge of, hey, am I building a melee character? Am I building a spellcaster character? You can combine them together, but constantly you run into the problems like, well, I, he spent all these points to cast spells, and he's very durable. He punches really hard. I want to get into combat, right? But if you're into combat, then now you're not using necessarily all your spells. It's harder to make, and if you make him a combat-focused caster character, well, he's a little slow, right? So the Truman Ancient, right? I've seen him. Different Wood Elf players take him in a few different types, and I think what's happened is they put him out there and they think he's going to be the indestructible force, and they find that nothing in Old World is an indestructible force. There's some close things to it, but everything has a counter to it, and I think they didn't fit into uh, the sister build that they were building, thematically or tonally, right? And so they really haven't given it a try. So I think there's still a lot of potential with the Treeman Ancient, and I think we just haven't seen players really innovate on it yet because I think they're very focused on, in particular, the lords on the dragons. and other builds and such. So I'm hoping we'll see more of him in the future.
So one thing that's interesting about this guy is he can't take magic items. So there's no arcane item to back up your magic here. There's only forest bites, which none of them really do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is a problem, I think.
Yep.
And he's got toughness 6 with 6 wounds. Great. But
That's
he
great.
just has 4 plus armor and a 5 up regen, which is also great, but no ability to then buy a third save, which everyone else in the game is like, yeah, but I could buy 3 saves. You can't do that.
Keep in mind, he is flammable. Not too many things in the game are flammable, but
Yeah.
treemen and vampires are flammable. So that means hit him with those rare times where like, wait a second, I do have a fire weapon. Hey, he doesn't get his regen.
Yeah, and you know what? He's like a giant sized thing, but he only has D3 stomps. I really wish they would just get rid of how many stomps you do and instead be one stomp for each model you in base contact with. Instead of like I do D6, I do D3, ooh, I do 2. Like I don't I think it's really random and not very balanced. I think it should just be like whoever you're touching gets to be stomped, whatever. But
Yep.
and,
Let's
and so
focus on what we
basically
have.
yeah, and he's hit with the not as good stomp number, right?
Hmm.
What if it was like
So
two
it
d
just depends.
six?
So you could be making him. He does have timber, which is just fun. I love that when he or the
Falls on
giant
somebody.
dies. It's just fun roll off. And the tree whack is good, but again, it's only I think it's a single attack. So yeah, I think the what you have with the Truman Ancient is he has great raw stats, but his movement, because he doesn't have swift stride, he's a monster, a behemoth that most other people can run away from or avoid, which does happen, or they'll be able to take him down with battle magic and fire spells, because he won't get his regen save and his armor save will only go so far, and he doesn't have a ward save on top of it. So I think those are some of the challenges with him. But again, I think there are builds that definitely use the Truman Ancient in more interesting ways that we just haven't seen yet.
It's also kind of funny that the two lures he has are like the ones that have fire magic. So he can throw pillars of fire at you, and he can have flaming sword, even though he's a tree.
Hmm. Yeah, why not?
I don't know. Like, it seems weird.
Yeah. So again, curious to see what happens in the future. I haven't seen a lot of them
Oh,
yet.
he has a Groot attack where he just uses roots to strangle you. Isn't that awesome?
Hmm. Yeah,
And we
super
didn't
cool.
cover tree whack, but tree whack is where someone who's you're fighting has to take an initiative test or they get hit.
Hmm.
The only problem is like that's really random whether or not someone's going to be able to pass that. Now, most scary things in the game are going to be like, yeah, I'm fine. They either didn't get hurt or they're going to pass the initiative
Yeah.
check,
The
right?
things that are really vulnerable to that are characters, and characters typically have a really high initiative, so it's rare for them to fail it.
Yeah, so like maybe you hit a what is the initiative of giant chaos one like 3, but that's only like a 50-50.
Yeah. Anyway.
So then finally is the branch wraith. So a branch wraith is a nice little wizard lady who's a tree,
Hmm.
and she can be level 2, and she can have
Hmm.
4 spites, but again, no magic items. So if you have a full tree army, you don't have the magic items on these guys. I mean, I feel like that's just really innately weaker. Like magic items just juice your character so much, and the 4
Yep.
spites don't make up for that enough by having
Yeah, or
like
they needed something else. They really needed
yeah.
like a tree min or treekin magic item list if they didn't want them taking all the other magic items and an allotment for that. But having just having the buff list, like take a vampire with just the vampiric powers, or take a chaos lord with just the demonic or the chaos gifts. It's just not enough. It's they really needed a treekin magic item list, and we don't see that now, which is why I think we're not seeing people take it as much because they can't juice them the way they need to make them compete. We'll see if the Arcane Journal changes that or not at all. So we'll find out.
Yep. But again, a lot of people are really into the tree stuff, and then so you have the option to have
It's a cool
a
theme.
big daddy and a couple little ladies with their magic.
Hmm.
So great. I mean, it kind of sucks you're gonna be a level 2 and you can't even buy the lore familiar to pick your spell. Ow. But
Yep.
if you just buy 3 of these ladies, then maybe some of them will get the right one, right?
But to your point, it's a popular thing. People want to make all treatment armies,
Yeah.
branch armies. So I'm hoping we'll see more of that in the future because it's just really fun.
Okay, so I think we should finally jump to first the forest spites because these are the special. things. So, what can your characters buy beyond the weapons and the items and the armor and stuff that make them cool? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, 50 points you cause terror. That's a lot of things are already going to have that, so you don't need this. And you don't have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways to like drop your leadership of the enemies that much. So no, sorry. Um, uh, for 40 points, you can make someone who gets hit with your bow suffer a couple extra strength 2 hits. I don't get this. I don't understand. And it says one or more. So if you hit them with like 3 arrows or something, they only take this once, not per arrow. They really didn't want this to be strong. I'm confused. I think it'd be cool if every single arrow had like splash damage. Great, but that's not what this is really, right? No. So these aren't the ones we see. Even though they're the most expensive, they're like, why would you want that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
disappointing. They're just not, the output isn't there.
but I think all of the next ones get used. So the befuddlement of mischiefs is in every single army because a single enemy unit that's in base contact with this guy gets -1 of their weapon skill and initiative. This is really, really good. The branchwraith was weapon skill 6. I think that the a lot of the other characters are really high weapon skill. Like even just the glade captain was weapon skill 6. So
Mm-hmm.
lowering by 1 really drops people into those breakpoints where you start hitting them on 2s or they have to hit you on 5s. That's great, and it's definitely worth 30 points because you're tissue paper. So don't get hit at all, please. Right
Yep. Well,
now,
again, you still don't have a lot of rerolls in the army period, so just being able to, you only have 3 or 4 or 5 attacks at most. The delta of hitting on 2+ versus 3+ is huge when you don't have rerolls.
right, and these are you can only have them once in your army anywhere, so you can't buy this like on every single character. You just put it on one person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can also have the Murder of Spites. This one, single enemy unit gets D3 strength 2 hits with AP 1. I mean, I guess you could just try to hurt people. It's kind of like a little assailant spell that always goes off. I mean, I spend 25 points on a Ring of Fury that never goes off ever. So I think that's neat. I guess it just
Mm-hmm.
depends on
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be fighting people where strength 2 hits do anything? Now maybe on like the what do you call it, the War Dancer character. Maybe she's often fighting infantry units where a couple extra strength 2 hits. Great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Lamentation of Despair. So this one is -1 leadership for people taking fear, panic, and terror checks nearby. Now the only problem is the 6-inch range, but I think that this might just be worth throwing on somebody because why don't you want them to be shot with a bunch of arrows at point blank range and run away? Especially if, like, let's say they charge you and you feign flight out of range and then they just barely don't reach you and it's your turn. You're like, oh boy, yeah. Now I'm just gonna fill you full of arrows and when you take that panic check, I want you to run away. So I think that's worth 20 points, no problem. And then the other one that's very often combined with Befuddlement of Mischiefs is the Annoyance of Dentlings. So this one is if you're in a challenge, you're -1 to hit. If you combine this with the weapon skill thing, it really tips the fights in your favor. So when you have a Glade Lord and he's on a dragon and he's fighting the Chaos Lord on a dragon, the Chaos Lord's making you strike last, but you're like, I don't care, you can't hit me.
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Yeah, super powerful.
Okay. You know what else is really funny? You could just, if you weren't going to do that, you could put this, especially like let's say you wanted to take 2 Spellweavers. You take 2 Spellweavers, I think you got to take the War Dancer character. I keep forgetting, Shadow Dancer. You put
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Annoyance and Netlinks on her, right, the Shadow Dancer, and then have that character go and challenge the big scary thing. And now it's weapon skill 8 with the -1 to hit. Like they're just not going to hit you. And if you have the glittering robe or something, you could cast on yourself too. Imagine being hit on 6s.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have finally Resplendent Luminescence. So this model and any unit they join has magical attacks for 10 points. I think
Yep.
that's gotta go in your list, and it's magical attacks for your shooting and your close combat.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have ethereal units, or like I cast Walkers Worlds all the time, or
Yeah.
if you're fighting demons, goes through a ward save. Like I think there's just a good reason to have this. If you ever see Phoenix Guard on the other side of the table, you're like, well, you're not getting that 6-up
Yeah,
ward
but
save.
for 10 points, to your point, like it might not come up in half your games, but the other
10
half your
points.
games, spending that 10 points to just have something in your toolbox to deal with that because it works in melee and range. It's just you got to take it, just to have it, just in case, right? It shows up.
Yeah, and I do think there's a lot of things in the Wood Elf book that build around, hey, if you want to have one unit of like 20 Glade Guard and you just want to soup those 20 Glade Guard up, here's all the things you can make them magical attacks. You can give them magic banners to have them ignore cover, and then they can still have arcane bodkins for AP2, and you just have these 20 Glade Guard just mowing people down. But people don't do that because that's a lot of points in one unit of guys who have no armor. So instead, they just buy 4 separate units of 5, and then they don't have these buffs really, right? So I think you could, and I would be very excited to try running more of like a brick of actual Wood Elves and just seeing if they can survive a turn. I don't know. We'll see. So as you can see here, none of these really help your spellcasters. And I mean, other than making some of them a little bit harder to hit, they don't really help the tree characters either. This really helps the Glade Captain and this maybe the Shadow Dancer.
And that's what you're not seeing with the ancient and the others. Is it's not really giving them that kind of defensive boost or offensive boost that you can get from stacking the basic magic items, or the expanding your spell capabilities.
I really think that Resplendent if you have a Waystalker, you gotta throw it on that guy. Just have the Way Watchers all have magical shots. 10 points.
Yep.
Okay, so then I think the weapons is... Let's see. Yes, here's our magic items. So now we're going to talk about some of the Wood Elf character builds. Obviously, there's the kind of the main items in the main book. I think that the Ogre Blade tends to be just the best magic sword. I mean, other than I could literally list 2 that might...
Which is true for most armies.
Yeah. But I think that the Spear of Twilight is pretty good, especially when it's combined with the item later down that means that people can't use the strength bonus of weapons against you. But the only problem is then you have a Spear of Twilight, and this one is AP2, Killing Blow, always wins on a 3+. So then you don't have to have the strength bonus, right? But if you buy this item and the one that means neither you or your opponent get the strength bonus, then you have no other items. You just have that, which is very scary, I think. Because I think people have been taking a lot of things that can say, oh, look, a 9 wound toughness 6 dragon. If you don't have triple save, you are dead in 1 turn. Right? Blades of Loic. So we've got a nice little... So it's the same D3 attacks that main weapon that the War Dancer got to have was, but this one's magical attacks, and they can reroll to wound. Rerolling to wound's cool. I like it. It really helps you make sure that you murder that whole front rank by yourself.
Yeah, but the problem is, again, no AP. So that's the challenge.
So there is a dance that improves the AP of the weapons of the unit, I think. So I think if you pick that dance, and you start with the 3 attacks, and your Furious Charge, and your Strikes First, you will have up to 7 attacks rerolling to wound that are AP2.
Yeah, hopefully you're throwing enough dice that you're going to be able to chew through things. But again, I still wouldn't be running into things with high AP or high
and you are taking a 45-point weapon on a guy who's only 85 points. So like, what if you just brought 2 of them instead? Like you don't. I don't know.
Yeah, again against light armored or mid armor things, no problem. But I'm not going to run into 2+ armor save, Blood Knight unit with that.
Yeah, and you know what? The War Dancers, if they see the Blood Knights, they're going to go, oh hey, you guys have an Arc of Sight. We don't. We're going to run past you. So you're not going to charge me because you can't see me anymore. All right, then we have, a fun bow. The Bow of Lauren. So this one lets you make a number of shooting hacks equal to your attacks characteristic. This is annoying for me. Really annoying. Because guess how many attacks the Waystalker has? 2. So like...
It's more than 1.
Yeah, but you can also just take Hagbane tips for 6, or the Swift Shiver Shards for 6 points. To get 2 shots.
Yeah, but can't you take this on the other characters that have 3 attacks? Can you take it on the
Yes, you can take it on your Glade Captain, which uses almost all of his points to take it, or your Glade Lord, who then has the 4 attacks.
Yeah, I think, this is, I think, intentionally done, and they're trying to say, hey, it's not going to make your Waystalker this ultimate sniper and yada, 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 yada. They're really making it for that Lord or that hero captain who's, is running around on a stag or a unicorn or a Warhawk. I believe is what they were expecting when they made this item.
Then we've got a bow that's essentially the exact same as a regular Azrai longbow. It's only 10 points, gives you quick shot and magical attack, so that's cool. And you can use your magic arrows with it because it counts as an Azrai longbow. It lets you reroll to hit once, but if you miss the second time, you get hit. But I mean,
Bummer.
that's probably not going to happen because you're bliss skill 6 or 7. So just, I think you should. I think you could
Well,
take this.
you roll a 1 by 1, it happens. But
If you're not
odds
going
are
to take
low.
anything else, I think 10 points for your Waystalker to have that. Reroll the hit
Not
with
bad for
your.
10 points.
Yeah, why not,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we more often see some of these other items. So Helm of the Hunt gives you +1 to your armor save, and you can have a +1 attack when you in your weapon skill when you charge.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I think we see this a lot on the Glade Captain, who's on a
Yep.
stag, because the Glade Captain on a stag is weapon skill 6, and he's got a 3+ armor save or something. So if you have the Helm of the Hunt, now you have a 2+ armor save, and you have 4 attacks and weapon skill 7 when you charge. So you're basically
Mm-hmm.
count as like a Glade Lord when you charge somebody.
Yeah, it's a really good combo.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see this on the Dragon Guy because the Dragon Guy only gets light armor and a shield, and if he takes this, it's then the same armor save as anything else. So this
Yep.
only makes sense on somebody who's on the stag or the horse or on foot.
Yep.
Um, this one is you have a couple of items in here are like you get a special ability if you're near a forest, but what if you're not? And it's
Yep.
still like a lot of points.
And I know you can bring a forest and such, but again, it is uh, building an army contextually around assuming you have to have forests in order to be successful. Maybe not the most reliable battle plan, so wouldn't necessarily recommend those items. They are cool, but if you're chaining yourself to a forest, you're really limiting your strategic options on the battlefield.
Yeah, and you know what's better than having a 4 up ward save is never being hit by anything because you have evasive and feign flight.
Yep.
So you can just try that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got okay, so Mercuis, Mersuis. I think pretty sure this is like some kind of Celtic word, so who knows how to pronounce it? Locus. This is the item that says you and your opponent don't get to increase the strength of their weapons or from the weapon. So if you're on the dragon who's toughness 6 and you take this weapon or this item, now people who have great weapons and stuff, they're probably just at their base strength of 4 or 5 and they're having a hard time to hurt you. And remember how we
Mm-hmm.
said you could make yourself really hard to hit as well. So if you're really hard to hit, you're really hard to wound, they're not going to do anything to you.
Yeah, but it's saying it's not modified by any weapon. So if they're modifying it through not weapons, like a demonic strength or something from an enchantment or
Yeah,
armor or something else, it will still work. So it's not all sources, it's specifically the weapon itself. To be
it is
fair,
most
the weapon
sources though.
itself is 90% of the sources that would increase strength, to be fair.
Yeah, so if you were fighting the Chaos Lord with an Ogre Blade, he's strength
Yeah.
5 base. So instead of being strength 7, wounding on a 3+, he's now strength 5, wounding on a 5+ if you're on a dragon. And if you already made him hit you on 5s, and now he's
Mhm.
wounding you on 5s.
Yep. So if you want to make that defensive build, this is a great way to go about doing that.
Yeah, I think the only problem with this is it doesn't do anything for the strength 7 dragon attacks that hit you too.
No.
Anyway, Glamour Weave. So this one is it's basically the unicorn ability. So they have to take a leadership test before they fight you. I think the problem is that most things that you're scared of hitting you have good leadership,
Yep.
but
Exactly right.
you know, I don't know if it's worth 30 points when a unicorn was 35.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit too pricey. I like what it does. If it was 10 points, I'd probably take it. 30, not so much.
To be fair, I'd take Beguile on my Neferat all the time because it feels thematic.
Well, yeah, but you're doing that for fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's awesome.
And it doesn't take my magic points allotments. It's something else. So we have
No.
Banner of. Okay, we're gonna probably not do the banners because the banners have more to do with the unit synergy, right? I mean, it's not necessarily the character. So
Yep.
we'll come back to them when we talk about the units. But as we continue with the character build, so the units are the enchanted items. We've got the Wraithstone, -1 to leadership. So again, we do have a couple things in here that help lower the leadership. So enemy units suffer -1 while they're within 6. So again, we have -1 leadership, but you have to be within 6 inches. If this was like 12 or 18, it'd be really, really good. You don't want to be 6 inches away from anybody, right? I don't
Generally
think
speaking, no.
no. Well, when you're Wood Elf, you don't want to be 6 inches away from anybody.
Yeah, again, I think that there are lowering leadership could matter if you're trying to break the enemy, and you certainly have the potential to cause a lot of panic tests from shooting attacks with this list. But again, getting close to them, maybe a character running around, on a Warhawk or something, trying to get ranged. But you're getting real close. It's a little risky to do that versus, generally speaking, you're not trying to break them in melee as much. So yeah, in general, not a huge fan of that combo.
Okay, you know what I am a huge fan of is
Hmm.
the hail of I fired a catapult at you arrow, which
Yeah.
is I fire a strength 4 AP1 template that just it goes to directly center over the unit and it doesn't scatter
Hmm.
at all as long as you just hit. And remember how good your weapon skill or your bliss skill is?
Very
What
high.
I don't know, Mike, if you had that bow that lets you reroll a hit and you fire the hail doom arrow, do you get to reroll the hit with the hail doom arrow?
What gives you the reroll there?
It says so this there's a bow. The bow says I Sendi's Bane counts as an Azrael longbow. You can reroll a single fail to hit.
Okay.
And this Hail of Doom arrow says you fire from your Azrael longbow, which it is one. If you hit,
Is it? It says Azray longbow only.
yeah,
That
it
was not
says
an Azray longbow.
but Mike, it is.
Counts Azray longbow.
I
Okay.
think I think your Waystalker takes Ascendi's Bane and one of these bad boys, and then says, "Oh look, those 25 clan rats! I'm gonna kill all of them in one go."
Well, you're not going to kill 25 clan rats with this bow.
You're gonna kill 12, and then they're gonna panic and run away, which is great.
It's still a blast template, so you still have to 4+ to hit the other, right?
If they're in like a 5 by 5 square, you get like 9 fulls and like 12 partials or something. It's kind of a lot. I think it's
Yeah.
I think this is great. People don't do this at all right now because who's bringing bricks of infantry? Well, we'll see.
I think we're going to see more of that in the future.
Yeah, I and also this is cool as hell. Like, why do you not want to do this?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, we also have the wailing arrow. I think this one is also pretty useful. So this one is just you have to take a panic test after they get hit with it. What you do is you wait until somebody's under half strength, right? Like let's say it's a warband unit of like goblins, for example, and they started with 20 and now they only have 8 guys left, and you just say, okay, I'm ballistic skill 7. I'll hit you with this, and now you have I don't know leadership 4 panic test, or you just break and flee.
Hmm.
That's amazing. Yeah, so
Great
I think
combo.
these are fun. Like you gotta like this is just the fun stuff that you have to find some space for. I think. Okay. I've never heard of Deep Sphere, so it's probably not very good. Any moves are within 6 inches of terrain feature. Try to cast a spell. You can't dispel it, but then they get hit with a couple D3 strength 4. Yes, D3 4 hits. So if they're near a forest and you just want to let them cast, then they get hit with some hits.
Yeah, but again, contextual, right? And the other person will know that you have this. So again,
So then they'll just not sit next to the
not
forest, right?
exactly right. So, and
So
again, unless you know you're at your buddy's house and he just has only force on his table, and you're trying to do this as a ha ha ha. But if you're going to an event, you just have no idea what terrain
also,
you're going to
this
be
is your
dealing with.
arcane item, so you're not taking lore familiar, you're not taking anything else. You're taking this instead.
Yeah, it's gonna be you're gonna be hard pressed to choose that. Yeah.
Okay. But instead, we have the broken stave, which is what everyone calls it because it's so insanely good.
Hmm.
So as long as you're within 3 inches of the woodland terrain feature, but this is you now, so you get to
Yeah,
pick to be
you have more
there.
control over it, and
Um,
you could at least bring one,
yeah,
right, with this art.
yeah, you can just deploy it in your own
So you know
deployment
you have
zone
one.
and just sit in
Hmm.
there. You increase your dispel range by 3. Amazing, especially
Absolutely.
because we've already talked about this. You very likely have one Glade Lord and one Spellweaver, so you just have one high level
Exactly.
wizard. You're not taking like 4 of them. So having
Hmm.
your dispel range improved is great because otherwise people are going to stay out of it. And then when you're within that range, the bearer can roll an extra d6 when making dispel roll. So you get a free
Huge.
dispel scroll on every single dispel.
Yeah, it's fantastic. This is a great item. You want
Ugh.
to have that forest, you know, near center, but on your side, and just park your wizard around it. It's going to be very effective at shutting down enemy casters. Very effective.
I mean, yeah, that's really good. Dispel
Hmm.
scrolls are 20 points each, so if you use this twice, you're already there.
Hmm.
And you're going to
Yep.
use it more often because you have the dispel range too.
Yes, you will.
Okay. And the Wand of Witch Elm is just the last item here. So we've got you can reroll a failed casting roll. This is what every high elf wizard gets for free, and they can also take arcane items. So, and you have to be near woods to do it.
Yep.
Why isn't it
No,
just that every spellweaver, if they're like, they should just have this
but they
then?
don't.
But they don't. Instead, they have the
Nope.
broken stave.
Yep. All right. What else? Let's move on.
That's it. You know, I think that's
We
it. I
did
mean,
it.
we've got special rules here. We talked about the tree whack, so they defer D3 hits when they miss. This is characters and units can do this. Talismanic tattoos like on the Spellweaver. Um, basically those are your character builds. So you very likely have one Glade Lord who's on a stag or a dragon, and then one Spellweaver who's a level
Pretty
4 with the
common.
Oakenstave.
Yep.
And then you could have
Do you want
maybe
to go through the signature spells at all?
yeah. Where let's see.
We
Yes.
should go through that.
Aha.
There we go.
Okay. So if you take the Oakenstave, for example, then you can still swap a spell out for your signatures. The most common one here is this tree singing. So you get to cast a vortex on a 7+. It's this 3-inch blast that counts as a forest in every way.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a 9+, it's a 5-inch. The only problem with this is it remains in play, and which means that they always dispel it on the lower number. So if they're within range of you, they can just get rid of all the time. But there are a lot of abilities that turn on your turn
Mm-hmm.
for being near forest. So just being able to summon it,
Yep.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Forest Walker is really cool, but no one needs to do this. It's you get to teleport yourself to another forest.
Yep.
That's
It's a great ability. Again, it's super contextual, and you need to be playing on a table that just has lots of forests where you need to do this. But also, generally speaking, with the way you're building your caster or your right or your characters, you're typically not necessarily wanting to teleport around the battlefield. So, it contextually can be super powerful, but the contextuality when this comes into play is not as often. So that's why you just don't see it a lot.
I think the thing you want to do is you want to teleport your Wood Elf character on a dragon to the other side of the board to where they are. But they have to be
Mm-hmm.
6 inches away from enemies. And if it's to their
Yep.
deployment zone, then they deployed in that forest to block you from doing that. So then you can't go
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yep.
And hey, if you want to cross the whole board in one turn, there's the spell called Arcane Urgency that already lets you do that.
Yep. And it's just and if you're not casting it turn one because it's zoned out, right? You typically aren't wanting to hold off, too many turns before you get your dragon in there. You want to get into play. So again, like I said, it has the potential to be very powerful, but generally speaking, the contextual criteria to make it trigger and to be powerful are just very uncommon. So you're rarely going to take it.
Then we have Flock of Doom, which is a magic missile that's a 3-inch blast with strength 3 AP1. This is basically the exact same thing as Doombolt from the lore of Dark Magic, except that Doombolt has a longer range.
Yep.
So, actually, Doombolt's AP2, I think. So Doombolt's just better.
Doomboat's good. Yep, Doomboat's pretty good. But
So
again, if you're building a list that has a lot of missiles, right? If you're taking right, uh, battle magic, elementalism. Again, if you're looking for more missile attacks, it's another way to get another missile attack into the list.
yeah, and you can always take this. So if you bring Elementalism and you roll your spells and you don't get Wind Blast and you're like, crud, I really need to shoot people. And hey, they have a really good Dispeller. They're just going to wipe out my tree singing every single turn.
Mm-hmm.
Then take this over nothing, right? Take this over,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what are the bad spells in Elementalism? Flaming Sword?
Still going to get some good. Well, again, even if you get wind blast, you might want this as well. So, right,
That's
it's
true. You
definitely
can
great.
have both. Why not both?
You can have both. You don't have to pick and choose. And you could take the Ruby Ring of Ruin, and you could have another, right? So you can,
And you know
if
what?
you want
I
to
did
bring a lot
kind of
missiles, you can.
just 5 minutes ago say how much I liked the Strength 4 AP1 Blast template and how cool it was. I don't think I can go ahead and just badmouth the Strength 3 Blast template at this point, right? I have to kind of stick to
They're
my
both
guns here.
effective. They have potential.
Why not use one
Cool.
and the other?
Yep, there you go. You don't have to pick and choose. All right, so we made it to the end of our part one segment, and we will pick up part two shortly. Evan, any last words on part one?
Barking? Like tree bark.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.